The moment I asked my husband one quiet question, his face collapsed like wet paper. Do you know what illness she carries? In that instant, his lies began drowning him faster than guilt itself. My name is Marianne Cole, and I am a woman who has lived long enough to understand that betrayal never arrives loudly. It creeps in softly, disguised as routine, as trust, as comfort. I spent more than half my life believing that my marriage was solid, steady, and safe. But the night my husband walked back through our front door after his so-called business retreat, I realized safety had been nothing more than a story I once whispered to myself to fall asleep. He stepped into the house with a glow I had not seen on him in years. His skin held a sunburned warmth that no conference room could possibly give. His hair was lighter, like it had been brushed by ocean wind, not fluorescent lighting. And his smile, oh, that smile. It did not belong to me anymore. It belonged to another woman. The one he thought I did not know about, but I knew. I had known for days, and I had prepared. I welcomed him back with the gentleness of a woman he believed was clueless. I smoothed my dress, kept my voice soft. When he hung his jacket on the chair and turned his back, I inhaled deeply, bracing myself for the moment I would detonate everything he built with his deception. Samuel, I said calmly, do you know what illness she carries? Silence, thick, immediate. Violent. He froze, like someone had ripped the oxygen straight from the room. His keys slipped from his fingers, clattering onto the hardwood floor. His face drained from sun-kissed peach to sickly ash. I watched his throat work as he tried to swallow his terror. What illness? Marianne, what are you talking about? His voice cracked the way glass cracks before shattering. I tilted my head, keeping my expression steady, almost bored. You were close to her for nearly 2 weeks. Surely she told you. He stared at me like I had just spoken in another language. Panic crawled up his neck, blotching his skin red. He took a step back, then forward, then back again, like a man trying to run from a wildfire but realizing it is inside him. I need to call her. He fumbled for his phone. Go ahead, I murmured. He dialed once. Voicemail twice. Voicemail. A third time. Still nothing. His breathing became jagged, sharp. I could almost hear his thoughts racing. Was it real? Was he exposed? Did he risk everything? He did not know that I invented the illness. He did not know that I invented this entire storm. He did not know that every step he took was me tightening the rope around his lies. Samuel, I said gently, the urgent care on Willow Street is open until 7. You should go. He grabbed his keys with trembling hands and bolted out the door like the house was burning. When the door slammed behind him, the silence that followed was not peaceful. It was cleansing. I exhaled slowly. A woman reborn. I poured myself a glass of Merlot, taking the first sip as if I were toasting the end of my former life. Then I walked to the dining room table where my folder of evidence waited. A folder I had been building piece by piece, like a detective gathering clues at her own crime scene. Printouts, screenshots, bank statements, anonymous photos sent to me by someone who recognized my husband in a beachside restaurant, arms around a woman he claimed was just a coworker. Her name was Lena Marlowe and she had no idea who I was, but I knew everything about her. The credit card charges told the truth first. The Seaside Inn in Monterey. A couple's spa package with rose petals and champagne. A reservation at a rooftop restaurant known for engagement proposals. Then came the messages, the ones he thought he had deleted. The ones that lived forever in our shared cloud account. Late night conversations, inside jokes, soft declarations, plans whispered in digital shadows, and the worst part, he told her he felt alive with her. As if I had been nothing but a long winter, I sat alone in the dim light of my dining room, surrounded by evidence of a marriage rotting from the inside. But I did not cry. Not anymore. I had done my crying days before, silent tears on a cold bathroom floor, asking myself what I had done wrong, but grief had a way of sharpening into clarity, and clarity lit a fire while Samuel sat in a sterile waiting room, imagining catastrophic diagnoses. I laid out every piece of his betrayal in careful rows like a surgeon preparing instruments. Every lie, every secret, every stolen moment. Each one more painful than the last, but necessary. My phone buzzed. Marianne, please answer. What is happening? I am losing my mind. I placed the phone face down. Let him spiral, let him sit in the fear he created. I walked through the house slowly, touching each piece of furniture like I was saying goodbye to the woman I used to be, the woman who apologized too quickly, who forgave too easily, who trusted a man who no longer deserved no more. The new version of me was rising, formed from truth, rage, and quiet resolve. And when Samuel returned from the clinic, sweating and desperate, he would not be facing the wife he left behind. He would be facing the woman he helped create, the woman who now knew everything, the woman who was ready. If that single question shattered Samuel's confidence, imagine what will happen when he walks back into our home and sees the mountain of evidence waiting for him. I am not done, far from it. Because when a woman over 50 finally recognizes her worth after years of silence, her power becomes unstoppable. In the next part, you will witness the moment I confront him with every secret he thought would stay buried. If you want to feel the full force of that reckoning, every tremble, every truth, every tear, make sure you follow, subscribe, and stay with me. The real storm is only beginning. When Samuel finally returned that night, the sound of the front door opening felt like the universe holding its breath. I sat in the living room, legs crossed, a lamp casting a soft amber glow over the table where I had arranged every piece of evidence like a private museum of betrayal. My heart did not race. My palms did not sweat. I was a woman past 50 who had already survived more than heartbreak, grief, aging, loneliness, reinvention. This was simply another transformation. He stepped inside slowly, as if the air had thickened. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair messy, his face pale as winter fog. He clutched the medical paperwork in one shaking hand. There's nothing wrong with me, he said, voice hollow. The tests were clear. All of them. I nodded. Good. For a moment, confusion rippled across his expression. Then suspicion. Then fear. Marianne, why did you ask me that? Why would you say something like that about her? I leaned back, letting silence wrap around us. Silence is powerful when you have the truth behind it, because, I said softly, there are consequences for betraying someone who loved you for half her life. His knees buckled slightly, and he lowered himself onto the sofa opposite me. The man looked smaller, like the arrogance had been drained straight from his bones. Marianne, please. Please talk to me. Oh, we're going to talk, I replied, sliding the first piece of evidence forward, a printed credit card statement. But this time, you'll listen. His eyes landed on the highlighted hotel charge. A seaside inn in Monterey. He flinched like I had struck him. I can explain. No, I cut in sharply, you can't. And you won't. Not tonight. One by one, I laid each document in front of him. A restaurant receipt with 2 entrees. A spa package labeled romantic retreat. Screenshots of messages he never thought I would see. Photos showing him in sunglasses, leaning close to Lena at a beachside bar. His breathing turned shallow. His hands shook. Shame bloomed across his face like a bruise. Marianne. I never meant for you to see any of that. And yet I did, I said calmly. Funny how truth always washes ashore. He dragged a hand across his face, exhaling shakily. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Then how was it supposed to be? I asked. You disappear with her for nearly 2 weeks while telling me you're in strategic meetings? You sent her late-night texts while I sit up waiting for you to call? You let me believe you were exhausted from work when you were actually energized by vacation sunlight and stolen kisses? Tears gathered in his eyes. I felt nothing watching them fall. You don't understand, he whispered. Lena made me feel alive again. I laughed, a small, sharp sound. You could have told me you were unhappy. You could have tried to fix what was broken. But you didn't want repair, Samuel. You wanted escape. He opened his mouth to argue, but I continued, pacing my words like a blade sliding into linen. You wanted a secret adventure with a woman who didn't know your flaws, your fears, your aging body, your insecurities. You wanted someone who doesn't remind you of your failures. You didn't fall in love with her, Samuel. You fell in love with the version of yourself you pretend to be around her. He swallowed painfully. I'm sorry. Sorry, I repeated slowly, is a blanket too thin to cover the cold truth? His shoulders hunched. His shoes tapped the hardwood floor in jittery panic, the sound of a man cornered by his own choices. I reached for the next set of papers, messages between him and Lena. You told her, I read aloud, that being with me felt like winter, and she made you feel like sunrise. He closed his eyes, humiliation pouring out of him. You compared your wife of more than 20 years to a season you were tired of. I shook my head. Imagine saying that about a woman who supported you through unemployment, surgeries, and sleepless nights with your aging mother. He wiped his face with the back of his hand. I was confused. Confused men don't book oceanfront suites, I said. Confused men don't whisper future plans through text messages after midnight. His voice broke. Marianne, please, how long have you known? Long enough, I answered. Long enough to remember every detail you hoped I would miss. Long enough to stop blaming myself. He blinked, startled. You blamed yourself? Of course I did, I said bitterly. That's what women our age do. We question our worth. We worry we've become invisible. We wonder if the lines on our faces are the reason our marriages crack. My voice steadied, steel threading through it, but then I realized something. You didn't betray me because I aged. You betrayed me because you didn't know how to face your own aging. He looked away, guilt carved deep into the lines of his forehead. I lifted the final document, a printed screenshot of a message where he told Lena he wanted to start fresh with her. When exactly, I asked, were you planning to tell me you were leaving? He let out a broken, gasping breath. I wasn't ready yet. I didn't want to hurt you. You didn't want to feel guilty, I corrected. There's a difference. The room fell silent. Heavy. Final. I stood up and walked toward the doorway. Not to leave, but to show him exactly what power looks like when reclaimed by a woman he underestimated. Samuel, I said quietly, you need to go. He stared at me. Tonight? Yes. Tonight. My voice did not waver. Take a bag. Take your keys. Take your guilt. Leave everything else. He rose slowly, shoulders sagging under the weight of his own choices. Marianne, please. I don't want to lose you. You lost me the moment you chose her, I said softly. Now you'll feel what absence truly means. He took one final look at me, like a man staring at a home he burned himself, then walked out into the cold night. When the door clicked shut, I sank into the quiet. A quiet that no longer felt lonely. A quiet that felt earned. A quiet that felt like the beginning. When Samuel left that night, the silence felt like a living thing, heavy, alert, watching me the way a storm watches the sea. I sat on the couch, hands folded on my knees, breathing slowly, letting every cracked piece of myself resettle into something sharper, stronger, steadier. I expected to cry. I expected to collapse once the adrenaline faded, but instead, I felt awake. For the first time in years, the house did not feel suffocating. It felt honest. It felt mine. I stood, walked to the kitchen, and poured myself a cup of chamomile tea. I cupped the warm mug in both hands and leaned against the counter while the clock ticked softly from the living room, an oddly comforting rhythm, like my life had finally returned to its natural pace. My phone buzzed on the counter. Samuel again, please answer. I need to talk. I let it ring. He needed to sit with the emptiness he created, but the next buzz wasn't him. It was a message from an unknown number. Are you Marianne? I think we need to talk about our spouses. My stomach tightened. Only one person would phrase it that way. Lena's husband. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed slowly, yes. I'm Marianne. A reply came almost immediately. My name is Daniel. I found messages on Lena's tablet. I think she and your husband, well, you know. I exhaled a humorless breath. Oh, I know, I whispered to myself. He suggested we meet the next morning at a small cafe near the bay, neutral ground, public, quiet. I agreed, then turned off my phone and went to bed without looking at another notification from Samuel. For the first time in weeks, I slept deeply. The next morning, the sunlight spilling through my curtains felt unfamiliar, like it belonged to another woman in another life. I dressed simply, blue blouse, soft sweater, jeans that made me feel sturdy, and headed to the cafe. Daniel was already seated at a corner table. He was in his mid-50s, graying hair, kind eyes that had clearly cried recently. The kind of man who looked like he'd spent a lifetime showing up for people who didn't always show up for him. He stood when I approached. "Marianne?" "Yes," I said softly. We shook hands, then sat. A moment passed where neither of us spoke, the weight of our mirrored pain resting between us like a third guest. Finally, he broke the silence. "Thank you for meeting me. I know this is awful." Awful didn't begin to cover it, but I nodded. "When did you find out?" I asked. 2 days ago, he said, voice tight. She left her tablet on the kitchen counter. Normally she's very private, but that morning she rushed out. Something in me, I don't know, told me to look. His eyes dropped to his coffee. I didn't know what I would find. He laughed weakly. I wasn't prepared. "No one ever is." He pulled a folded sheet of paper from his jacket, a printed text thread. A message from Samuel, counting the days until I'm in your arms again. A message from Lena. Monterey was magic. Let's go back soon. Just us. I inhaled sharply. Same woman, same man, same lies in different homes. Daniel slid the page toward me like he couldn't bear to hold it anymore. "How long?" he asked. "Do you know?" I nodded. "Longer than I want to admit." He closed his eyes. "I'm so sorry," I said sincerely. His voice cracked. "I thought we were good. We have grown kids. We survived hard years. I thought we were finally in a calm stage of life." That hit deep, because I thought the same. We sat in silence for a long moment, two strangers united by betrayal, breathing through grief that did not belong to us but had landed squarely at our feet. Finally, Daniel straightened. "What are you going to do?" he asked. "I told Samuel to leave," I said. "That was step one." Daniel nodded. "I'm filing for divorce." There was no hesitation in his voice, only resolve. "I won't beg her to stay," he continued. "I won't compete with someone who was willing to throw away decades of partnership for cheap excitement." I almost smiled. There was strength in him, strength born of deep wounds. "I'm meeting with a lawyer," I said. "I'm not letting Samuel rewrite this story to make himself look like the wounded party." Daniel's expression hardened. "They always try, don't they?" he whispered. "Yes. They do." He reached into his coat again and handed me a small USB drive. "This has everything I found on Lena's devices. Screenshots. Emails. Photos. If you need it for legal purposes, it's yours." For a moment, I didn't move, then I closed my hand around the drive. "Thank you." He nodded slowly. "We can help each other." And something in me shifted. It felt like alliance. It felt like dignity being stitched back together. We talked for another hour, about shock, betrayal, aging, the cruelty of being replaced so easily by someone chasing their own reflection in another person. And then, as we stood to leave, Daniel said something that carved itself into my bones. "You deserved a man who grew old with you, not a man who grew bored." I inhaled sharply. That single truth hit harder than any evidence. He squeezed my hand. "We're going to be okay." When he walked away, I watched him blend into the foggy morning, a man reshaping himself after disaster. And for the first time, I believed that I could reshape myself too. When I returned home, Samuel was waiting on the porch steps, eyes red, face crumpled. "I need to talk," he said desperately. "Please." I walked past him, unlocked the door, stepped inside, and turned to face him. "You have 5 minutes," I said. He followed me in like a man entering a courtroom where he feared the verdict. "I made a mistake," he began. "Lena isn't answering me. I don't know where she is. I don't know what's going on." I looked him dead in the eye. "That's not my problem." His mouth opened, then closed. He stared at me like the world had tilted. "You're serious?" he whispered. "Yes," I said. "You lost the right to lean on me the moment you betrayed me." His shoulders sagged. "I don't want her," he said suddenly. "Not anymore. I want you. I want us." A hollow, brittle laugh escaped my throat. "No, Samuel. You want the comfort of the life I built for you. You want safety because your fantasy collapsed. That's not love. That's fear." He choked on a sob. "Please, can't we try?" I slowly shook my head. You didn't choose me when it mattered. Silence. Then, leave, I whispered. For real this time. And he did. Not with anger. Not with defensiveness, but with the quiet resignation of a man who finally understood what he destroyed. When the door closed behind him, I pressed my palm to my chest, not because I was heartbroken, because I could breathe again, and for the first time, the air felt like mine. When Samuel disappeared down the walkway that morning, carrying nothing but the guilt that clung to him like a shadow, something inside me quietly shifted. Not relief. Not triumph. Something steadier. Something like the first warm day after a long winter, subtle, cautious, but unmistakably new. I stood in the doorway a moment longer, letting the cold air sweep across my skin, as if cleansing what was left of the life he had polluted. Then I closed the door, not softly, but with the kind of deliberate finality a woman earns only after decades of putting others first. Inside, the house felt different, not haunted anymore, just waiting for me to reclaim it. I walked into the living room, surveying the space I once shared with a man who slowly became a stranger. Photographs on the shelves. His favorite jacket draped over the armchair. Framed memories that now felt like props from a stage play I didn't realize I had been acting in. I took a breath so deep it trembled in my chest. Then I began, piece by piece. I removed him from the room. First, the jacket, folded neatly and placed in a cardboard box. Then the framed wedding portrait. We looked so young and so hopeful. I stared at it for several seconds before turning the frame face down and sliding it out of sight. Next, the books he never finished, collected for the version of himself he pretended to be gone, the cologne he wore for her instead of me gone, the travel brochures for trips he never took with me gone. Every item felt like a confession, every empty space felt like permission. By the time I was done, the room breathed easier. So did I. I sat on the couch, allowing the truth to settle. I was alone now, but for the first time, the word didn't scare me. It soothed me. My solitude wasn't abandonment. It was autonomy. Later that afternoon, while I was sorting through old paperwork, my phone buzzed. I expected another desperate message from Samuel, but the name on the screen stopped me. Daniel. I answered immediately. Marianne, he said, his voice thick with exhaustion but steadier than before. I thought you should know, Lena moved out this morning. I blinked. Moved out? Yes. Packed her things before dawn and left. She left a note saying she needed space to figure herself out. Space, the favorite word of people running from consequences. I'm sorry, I said quietly. He let out a breath that was half laugh, half heartbreak. I'm not. Not anymore. I refused to beg anyone to love me. That struck something deep inside me, something tender but fierce. You're stronger than you think, I told him. He paused. So are you. We talked for nearly half an hour, about the strange numbness that comes after devastation, about the sharp clarity that betrayal forces on people like us, about the disorienting freedom of suddenly being untethered. Before we hung up, he said, if you ever need company, even just coffee, you can call me. And for the first time in a long while, the idea of talking to someone didn't feel like a burden. It felt like a beginning. As the afternoon faded into evening, I opened the windows to let fresh air drift through the rooms. The breeze carried the faint scent of pine and distant ocean, and for a moment, I stood there absorbing it like medicine. That's when I noticed the small wooden box tucked on the shelf near the window, something I had nearly forgotten existed. Inside were old anniversary cards Samuel wrote during our early years, filled with promises and declarations that hadn't survived the weight of time. I opened one. His handwriting looped across the page. We will choose each other every day, no matter what life throws at us. I felt a quiet ache, not for him, but for the version of myself who believed that vow would last forever. I settled onto the couch with the box on my lap, letting myself grieve, not for the marriage, but for the years I surrendered to someone who no longer valued them. Tears came softly, slipping down my cheeks without urgency or shame. They weren't the desperate tears I shed in the early days of suspicion. These were cleansing tears, necessary, human, liberating. When the wave passed, I wiped my face and whispered into the empty room, I'm okay. And for the first time, the words felt true. That night, after a warm shower and a simple dinner, I sat at the dining table with a notebook and pen. My lawyer would need details, timelines, transactions, memories that formed the spine of what Samuel had done. I began writing. The first time Samuel acted strange, the restaurant receipt I didn't recognize, the scent of unfamiliar perfume on his shirt, the nights he claimed to be exhausted but stayed awake on his phone. The shift in his tone, the way he looked past me instead of at me the moment everything cracked, every entry was another step toward reclaiming the narrative of my own life. I was no longer drowning in uncertainty, I was documenting the truth, and the truth was powerful. As I wrote, my mind flashed back to the moment I first suspected something was wrong, one quiet Tuesday evening, when Samuel had come home early. His smile had been too bright. His shirt smelled faintly of citrus perfume. When I asked how his day was, he answered too quickly, the words falling from his mouth like he had rehearsed them in the car. That night, I ignored my intuition. Now, I wrote it down. When I finished the first 10 pages, I felt lighter. The pen had become a lifeline. Every word tethered me more firmly to myself. Around 9 o'clock, my phone buzzed again. I almost didn't look, assuming it was Samuel, but it wasn't. It was my sister, Julia, my steady anchor, my fiercest defender. Her message read, I heard from Mom. Call me when you can. I'm here. I called her immediately. The moment she answered, her voice wrapped around me like a blanket. Oh, Mari. I'm so sorry. Hearing her sympathy made my throat tighten. I'll get through it, I whispered. She exhaled shakily. Of course you will. You've survived harder things. But you don't have to pretend you're made of stone. A tear rolled down my cheek. I'm not pretending. I'm just exhausted. Then let me carry some of it with you, she said. That's what sisters are for. We talked for almost an hour, about the betrayal, the evidence, the confrontation, the unexpected calm that followed. Julia listened without judgment, without telling me what I should feel, which was exactly what I needed. Before we hung up, she said, when this is over, I'm taking you on a trip. Somewhere beautiful. Somewhere restful. Somewhere far from men who don't deserve you. I smiled, a real smile, not forced, not fractured. I'd like that, I said, and I meant it. As midnight approached, I stood at the window overlooking the quiet street. The night air carried the faint hum of distant traffic and the soft rustle of leaves, a lullaby for a city that never truly slept. Tomorrow, everything would shift again, lawyers, paperwork, decisions that would shape the next chapter of my life. But tonight belonged to me, and for the first time in a very long time, that felt like enough. The next morning, sunlight spilled across my bedroom like someone had pulled back a curtain inside my chest. For the first time in weeks, I woke without dread curling in my stomach. There was still pain, yes, betrayal leaves stains that don't wash out quickly, but the fear was gone. Replaced by something steadier. A plan. I showered, dressed in soft gray slacks and a cream sweater, and tied my hair back loosely. Today was the day I would meet the attorney my sister had recommended, a woman known in our community as a quiet storm, polite on the outside, ruthless in negotiation. Before leaving, I made myself a cup of tea, sat at the kitchen table, and reviewed the folder I had organized last night. It felt heavier than paper should feel. I traced one finger over the edge. Not for him, I whispered. For me. I locked the door behind me and stepped into the cool morning, the kind that smelled faintly of pine and wet earth. My breath formed soft clouds as I walked to my car, but inside my chest a different kind of warmth was growing, an ember ignited by truth. The law firm was a tall brick building on the corner of Harbor Street, with wide glass windows and a polished brass sign that gleamed in the winter sun. I pushed open the door and stepped into a lobby filled with modern art and the faint scent of eucalyptus. A friendly receptionist greeted me. You must be Marianne. Ms. Rayburn is expecting you. Moments later, the attorney appeared, a woman in her late 40s with sharp eyes, sleek hair, and an air of unshakable competence. She extended her hand. I'm Clara Rayburn. Come in. I've cleared the whole morning for you. We sat in her office, a space filled with soft lighting and meticulous order. It reminded me of a sanctuary, calm but powerful. So, Clara said gently, tell me everything. And I did, not rushed, not fragmented, not diluted by shame. I told her about the suspicious charges. The messages. The photographs. The lies. The night I asked Samuel about the illness. The way he ran. The way I finally stood up. Clara listened without blinking, taking notes with swift precision. When I finished, she leaned back and crossed her legs, considering me with an intensity that made my spine straighten. "Marianne," she said, "you are sitting on one of the strongest cases I've seen in years." I swallowed. Really? Really? You have documented evidence of emotional betrayal, financial misconduct, deception regarding marital funds, and attempts to conceal expenses for an extramarital relationship. Judges don't take that lightly. Her confidence radiated like heat. "We will secure your home, the majority of your shared assets, and compensation for every dollar he spent on this woman. You won't walk away with scraps. You'll walk away with justice." Justice, the word pulsed through me like a heartbeat. Clara leaned forward. "But understand this, he will likely try to manipulate the narrative. Men like your husband always do. They will claim unhappiness. They will blame midlife crisis. They will try to make you feel responsible." I nodded slowly. "He's already trying." Her expression softened. "Then we get ahead of it. We tell the truth. Not the version he prefers, the real one." She outlined the steps we'd take: a formal petition, a financial audit, subpoenas for records if necessary, protective orders to secure my assets, immediate legal separation. Every word she spoke wove a net of safety around me. "For the next few weeks," Clara said, "you focus on healing. Let me handle him." Healing. A strange concept, but for the first time, it didn't feel impossible. We finalized paperwork, made copies, signed forms. When I left the office 2 hours later, I stepped onto the sidewalk with confidence I hadn't felt in months. My life was shifting, and I was steering. When I returned home, the air inside the house felt different, lighter, almost expectant, like the walls themselves recognized the first steps toward my freedom. I made a simple lunch and sat by the window with my notebook, ready to continue documenting the timeline. But before I could begin, my phone buzzed. "Daniel, can I call?" His message read. I replied, "Yes." Seconds later, the phone rang. "Marianne," he said, sounding breathless, "I just got off the phone with my attorney. She agrees with yours. Our cases are strong if we stay firm." "That's good," I said. "Really good. And, there's something else," he added. "Lena contacted me." My stomach tightened. "What did she say?" "That she needs time," he replied bitterly. "That her feelings are complicated. That she didn't plan for any of this." I exhaled sharply. None of them plan. They just act. And hope we stay blind. There was a pause. "You know," he said softly, "talking to you makes this hurt less." To my own surprise, warmth bloomed in my chest. "I understand your pain," I said. "It makes it easier when someone else has lived the same storm." We talked for almost an hour, about lawyers, emotions, the strange emptiness of a house missing someone who never truly appreciated it. When we hung up, I felt steadier, not because of Daniel, but because companionship, real, platonic, honest companionship, has its own kind of medicine. The rest of the afternoon passed quietly. I cleaned the house, organized drawers that had been neglected, and replaced old photos with fresh flowers. Each small act felt like reclaiming pieces of myself. Around dusk, while lighting a candle on the coffee table, a sudden memory hit me: the night Samuel and I moved into this house. I remembered the way we twirled in the empty living room, laughing, imagining the years ahead. I stood in that same spot now, staring at the ghost of who we once were, but grief didn't overwhelm me this time. Instead, something inside whispered, "You are becoming yourself again." I touched the side of my neck gently, grounding myself in the present. In the truth. In the possibility of what comes next. After dinner, I settled onto the couch with a blanket and opened the notebook again, listing every detail Clara might need. As I wrote, the house grew quiet around me, the kind of stillness that once made me feel lonely. Tonight, it felt like peace. Just as I finished the last page, the phone buzzed. Not Samuel, not Daniel, not my sister. A number I didn't recognize. I hesitated, then answered. "Hello?" A warm male voice responded, slightly nervous but sincere. "Hi. Marianne? This is James. I live in your building." We've spoken a few times in the lobby. I blinked. James, the kind neighbor with the gentle smile. We're having a small gathering tomorrow evening, he continued, just a few neighbors, some wine, nothing fancy. I wanted to invite you. No pressure. For a moment, I was silent, not because I wasn't sure but because the invitation felt like a doorway. A simple, human invitation into something normal, into something new. Thank you, I said softly. I'll think about it. Of course, he replied warmly. Whatever you decide, we'd love to have you. When the call ended, I stared at my reflection in the dark window. The woman looking back at me wasn't the same one who begged for scraps of affection. She wasn't the same woman who stayed silent, who clung to routines that no longer nourished her. She was rebuilding, she was rediscovering, she was becoming, and tomorrow, maybe, just maybe, I would walk through that open door. The morning after James invited me to the small gathering, I woke with a strange mixture of nerves and curiosity humming beneath my skin. It had been years, decades, really, since I had gone anywhere without Samuel by my side, or at least without considering his opinion first. Now, the decision was entirely mine. My life was entirely mine. I stood at the bathroom mirror brushing my hair, watching the soft winter light fall across my features. I didn't look young. I didn't want to. I looked like a woman who had survived something sharp, something unforgiving, and was still standing. There was beauty in that, an honesty that makeup couldn't replicate. After breakfast, I sat by the window with my notebook, reviewing the final timeline I planned to give Clara at our next meeting. As I reread my entries, I realized something surprising. I didn't feel pity for Samuel anymore. I felt distance. A separation between the man I married and the man who betrayed me. They no longer occupied the same body in my mind. One was a memory. The other was the present, and I was choosing the present. Just as I closed the notebook, my phone vibrated. I sighed, expecting another plea from Samuel, but the name on the screen stopped me. Daniel. Morning, Marianne, he said when I answered. His tone carried fatigue, but also steadiness. I didn't wake you, did I? No, I said gently. I'm up. What's going on? I had a meeting with my attorney, he replied. Things are moving forward. Lena hasn't tried to come home. Are you okay with that? I asked. He exhaled, the sound aching and relieved at once. I think I am. Or at least I'm learning to be. I don't want someone who can walk away that easily. His honesty loosened something inside me. Neither do I whispered. There was a pause, warm and unhurried. Listen, he said, I hope you don't mind me checking in. Talking to you helps. It makes the world feel less heavy. My throat tightened, not from emotion, but from recognition. This connection between us wasn't romantic. It wasn't complicated. It was human. Two people rebuilding after the same storm. You can call anytime, I said softly. There was gratitude in his silence before we hung up. Later that afternoon, I opened my closet and stared at the rows of clothes, so many neutrals, so many pieces chosen to please Samuel's preferences. He always preferred me in muted tones, soft shapes, nothing too bold. A bitter smile curved my lips. Tonight, I wouldn't choose for him. Tonight, I would choose for me. My eyes settled on a dark green knit dress tucked in the back, something I bought 5 years ago but never wore because Samuel had said the color was too loud. I slipped it on, smoothing the fabric over my waist. The reflection staring back at me looked vibrant. Alive. A version of myself I hadn't met in far too long. I added a pair of simple earrings, brushed a light shade across my lips, and took one last look. Yes, I murmured. This is me. I arrived at the gathering just after 7. The hallway glowed with warm amber lights, and faint music drifted from James's apartment. My pulse fluttered, not with fear, but anticipation. When I knocked, the door opened almost instantly. Marianne. I'm so glad you came, James said, stepping aside to welcome me in. His smile was genuine, not performative. He wore a charcoal sweater and jeans, and somehow looked both relaxed and thoughtful. The room was softly lit, filled with the aroma of baked appetizers and the chatter of neighbors I'd seen in passing but never truly met. A few looked up and greeted me warmly. I felt something stir in my chest. Community. Belonging. A reminder that the world didn't end when a marriage did. James handed me a glass of red wine. Only if you want it. Thank you, I said, taking a sip. It was rich and smooth, warming me from the inside. He gestured toward the group gathered near the window. Come on, let me introduce you. Throughout the evening, I was surprised by how natural everything felt. Conversations flowed easily. Someone joked about the ancient elevator in the building. Another neighbor asked about my work. A woman named Carol complimented my dress, saying the color made my eyes look brighter. I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in far too long. At one point, leaning against the kitchen counter with James beside me, I realized how light my shoulders felt. How every breath came easier. You look different tonight, James said quietly. I turned to him. Different how? Freer, he replied. Like you finally let yourself breathe. The comment was so accurate it sent a tremor through me. Maybe I have, I said softly. He smiled, gentle, warm, inviting but not intrusive. You deserve that. We stood there in comfortable silence for a moment. I noticed how kind his eyes were, not searching for anything, not demanding anything, just present. It felt safe. As the night wound down and people began slipping into coats, James walked me to the door. I'm really glad you came, he said. So am I replied. His gaze held mine, steady, reassuring. If you ever want company, or someone to talk to, you know where I am. I nodded. Thank you, James. And strangely, I meant it more deeply than I expected. Back in my apartment, the quiet no longer felt heavy. I set my purse on the counter, kicked off my shoes, and sat on the couch still buzzing with the warm hum of human connection. My phone vibrated again. Samuel. I ignored it. Then another message, not from him. Daniel, just checking in. How was your evening? I smiled. Me, good. Really good, actually. Daniel, you deserve good. I stared at the screen for a moment, then typed me, so do you. When I set the phone down, I leaned back and allowed the fullness of the evening to settle into my bones. For so long, I thought everything after Samuel would be emptiness. But tonight proved something different. There was life waiting for me, warmth, people, possibility, not romance, not yet, maybe not ever, but connection. And for the first time since everything fell apart, I didn't feel like a woman rebuilding alone. I felt like a woman stepping into something new. Before bed, I stood by the window looking out at the moonlit street. Cars passed slowly. Leaves whispered in the wind. Somewhere below, laughter drifted from a distant porch. Life was continuing, and now, finally, I was part of it again. I whispered into the stillness, I'm coming back to myself. And the truth of it filled the room like light. The morning after the gathering at James's place, I woke with a quiet energy humming beneath my ribs, a gentle current, subtle but unmistakable. It wasn't joy, not exactly. It was something sturdier. Something like hope wearing sensible shoes. I brewed coffee, letting the aroma fill the kitchen. The house, once suffocating with the residue of Samuel's lies, now felt open, like a room finally aired out after years of stale air. I sipped from my mug and watched a pair of birds hop along the fence outside my window. Life continued with or without my permission, and oddly, I was grateful for that. Halfway through my second cup, my phone buzzed. I hesitated. These days every vibration carried the possibility of intrusion. But when I checked the screen, relief washed over me. Daniel, just 2 words, are you awake? I smiled and replied, yes. Coffee in hand. He called seconds later. Good, he said, his voice softer than the morning light. I wanted to check in. I know weekends can feel heavy. He wasn't wrong. Weekends used to revolve around Samuel, errands, chores, plans, or the silence between us that I never allowed myself to question. Weekends without him felt strange, like learning to walk on new legs. Last night helped, I admitted. It reminded me that my life isn't over. It's not, he said firmly. You're rebuilding something better. I swallowed the knot in my throat. How are you doing this morning? A quiet pause. Tired, he said honestly. But clearer. I slept for the first time in days. I felt something warm settle inside me. Shared healing creates its own kind of bond, not romantic, not needy, but steady. We talked for several minutes about small things, weather, errands, the stray dog that always wandered past his yard, before hanging up. When the call ended, I stared at the phone thoughtfully. Who knew that emotional oxygen could come from someone who had once been a stranger? By noon, I decided it was time to continue reclaiming my home. I turned on a soft playlist, rolled up my sleeves, and tackled the closet Samuel once dominated with suits he never wore and sweaters he insisted were timeless. Timeless, indeed. Timeless reminders of a man who lived in half-truths. I pulled down a box from the top shelf. Inside were old letters, anniversaries, notes scribbled on sticky pads during our early years. For a moment, I sat cross-legged on the floor, letting myself feel the sting, not because I missed him, but because I mourned the woman who believed those words. One letter caught my eye. A younger Samuel had written, "I promise to protect your heart like it's my own." I folded the letter carefully and then placed it into a donation pile. Promises that fragile didn't deserve a ceremonial farewell. Once the closet was cleared, I moved to the bedroom drawers, then the hallway, then the kitchen. Each small space I reclaimed felt like scrubbing lies off the walls. The deeper I cleaned, the lighter I felt. Around 3 in the afternoon, the doorbell rang. I froze. I didn't have many visitors these days. I took a slow breath and opened the door. Samuel stood on the porch. His hair was uncombed, eyes bloodshot, shirt wrinkled. He looked hollowed out, like guilt had feasted on him all night. "Marianne," he said, voice thin, "we need to talk." I didn't move aside. "What do you want, Samuel?" He swallowed hard. "I haven't heard from Lena. Not once. She's blocked me. Disappeared. I don't know where she is." "That's unfortunate," I said coolly. "But it has nothing to do with me." He flinched. "She just vanished. Packed up and left her home." "Choices have consequences," I replied. "Welcome to yours." "Please," he whispered, "can I come in?" "No," I said it calmly, without anger. The word felt like a full sentence, a complete boundary. He ran a trembling hand through his hair. "I'm losing everything." I met his gaze. "You didn't lose anything, Samuel. You gave it away." His mouth opened, but I continued before he could craft another excuse. "You had a home. A marriage. A partner willing to fight for you. And you traded all of it for temporary excitement." He blinked rapidly as tears formed. The man I once loved, once trusted, looked decades older in that moment. But sympathy no longer curled inside me. I had given enough of that in the past 20 years. "This doesn't feel real," he murmured. "I don't know how to fix it." "You don't," I said. "Because I'm not granting you that opportunity." He took a shaky step forward. "Marianne, please. I need you." A laugh escaped me, soft, sad, final. "No, Samuel. You need stability. You need familiarity. You need someone to soothe your guilt. That's not love. That's dependency." He stared at me like I'd struck him. I was confused. He whispered, "No," I said firmly. "You were selfish." The silence that followed felt colder than the winter air. Finally, he exhaled a defeated breath. "What happens now?" "You leave," I said. "And you let me heal." His shoulders sagged. For a moment, I thought he might argue. But instead, he nodded slowly, a gesture that looked like surrender. "I'm sorry," he said, almost inaudibly. I nodded once. "I know. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, just acknowledgement." He turned and walked down the steps, each movement heavy with regret. I watched until he disappeared around the corner, then closed the door gently. This time, the silence that followed didn't ache. It felt victorious. Later that evening, as the sky shifted to lavender and gold, I brewed another cup of tea and settled onto the couch. My limbs felt pleasantly sore from cleaning, my mind surprisingly cleared. I picked up my notebook and began writing again, not about Samuel, not about evidence or timelines, about me. My fears, my hopes, the pieces of myself I wanted to reclaim. Halfway through, my phone buzzed. "Daniel, just sending a little encouragement. You did something brave today." My lips curved into a real smile. "Me, how did you know?" "Daniel, because I did something brave too." My heart softened. "Me, tell me." He called instead of texting. I confronted Lena's family, he said. Not with anger. Just honesty. I told them I wouldn't carry the shame of her choices. And it felt freeing. I closed my eyes, letting his words settle. Daniel, I whispered, we're getting stronger. Yes, he said. One day at a time. We talked for half an hour, gently, easily, two people learning to navigate new emotional terrain. When we hung up, I didn't feel lonely at all. I felt supported, connected, alive. Before sleep, I returned to the window. The street outside glowed beneath street lamps, soft and comforting. The night no longer scared me. I whispered to my reflection in the glass, I am not broken. I am rebuilding. And as I crawled into bed, I realized something powerful. This chapter of my life wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about resurrection. The following week unfolded like a slow, steady drumbeat, one I could finally walk in rhythm with. Each morning I woke with fewer knots in my stomach, fewer shadows clinging to the corners of the house. Healing wasn't linear, but it was happening quietly, like soft light seeping under a door. That Monday, I drove to Clara's office for our next meeting. The building looked less intimidating now, its tall windows reflecting a sky streaked with winter blue. When I stepped inside, the receptionist greeted me like an old friend. Ms. Rayburn will be with you in a moment, Marianne. I sat in the waiting area, smoothing the hem of my sweater. A part of me still felt foreign in spaces like this, legal halls, negotiation tables, offices built for confrontation. But another part, a deeper and fiercer part, felt perfectly at home. Clara emerged wearing a deep maroon blazer, her expression focused. Come in, she said. We have progress. Those 3 words sent a ripple through me, anticipation mixed with nervous strength. Inside her office, she motioned for me to sit, then handed me a set of papers. This, she said, tapping the packet, is the formal petition for divorce. It includes your claims, financial misconduct, emotional abandonment, improper use of marital funds, and deception. I exhaled, steady but not calm. Nothing about this was calm, not what led to it, not what it meant. She continued, I've included a detailed request for financial compensation. With what Samuel spent on Lena, hotel bookings, dinners, travel, we'll seek reimbursement for every penny. Every penny. Hearing it aloud made my pulse slow in satisfaction and, she added, you will retain the house. Relief washed over me in a warm wave, because this home, these walls, this space, they were no longer a monument to betrayal but a sanctuary for my rebirth. Thank you, I murmured. Clara leaned back. Samuel has 30 days to respond. I expect he'll panic. Men like him always do when their secrets become legal documents. A humorless smile tugged my lips. He's already panicking. I'm sure, she replied. But you don't need to worry about his emotions now. Worry about your future. My future. A concept that had once terrified me now felt like fresh air. Clara slid a pen toward me. When you're ready, sign. My hand trembled, not out of doubt, but out of the sheer weight of the moment. I inhaled deeply, pressed the pen to the paper, and wrote my name, not as a wife, not as a victim, but as a woman choosing herself. When I finished, Clara placed a hand over mine briefly. You're doing the right thing. Leaving the office, I felt taller. Later that afternoon, I stopped by the cafe near the harbor. I ordered an herbal tea and settled by the window, letting the steam warm my face. Outside, gulls circled above the water, riding invisible currents. Their freedom didn't feel distant anymore. It felt familiar. Halfway through my tea, my phone buzzed. Daniel, his message read, can I call? Something happened. My heart thudded once, sharp, instinctive. I typed, yes. I'm here. The phone rang instantly. Marianne, he said, voice rough, I just got a call from Lena's sister. My grip tightened on the mug. What did she say? She said Lena left town. Packed her clothes, turned in her house key, and drove to her mother's place in Oregon. Did she say why? He exhaled shakily. Apparently Lena told her she needs to think about what she's done. And that she feels ashamed for hurting people who never deserved it. I leaned back slowly. Daniel, I said softly, that's not your burden. I know, he replied, but hearing she feels something, anything, actually helped. Not because I want her back. I don't. But because I needed to know she understood the damage she caused. His voice didn't tremble. It carried truth. Are you okay? I asked gently. There was a long pause. I think so, he said. Actually, I'm relieved. Closure is coming. Anne. Marianne, I want you to have closure too. His words wrapped around me like a soft blanket. I'm working on it, I whispered. We talked for several minutes more, about our attorneys, our shifting emotions, the strange sense of clarity sharpening each day. Before hanging up, he said, Hey, if you want company later, I could meet you for coffee. I smiled faintly. Maybe another day. Today, I need a little time alone. He understood. Of course. Take whatever time you need. That evening, I returned home and changed into comfortable clothes. I lit a lavender candle, turned on a soft playlist, and sat on the floor with my memory box, the one filled with keepsakes from earlier years. I opened it, expecting sadness. But instead, I felt a quiet acceptance. Inside were photos of Samuel and me during our first vacation, a ticket stub from a movie we once loved, a postcard he had written from a work trip long ago. I held each item briefly, letting the nostalgia wash over me without pain. These memories weren't lies, they were simply chapters that had ended. I placed the items back in the box, closed the lid, and whispered, Thank you for what you were. And goodbye for what you're not anymore. It was the closest thing to forgiveness I was willing to offer. Around 8, there was a knock at my door. I hesitated. Unexpected knocks were rarely good. When I opened it, James stood on the porch holding a small container. Hi, he said, with a sheepish smile. I made extra pasta tonight. Thought you might like some. Warmth bloomed gently in my chest. That's very kind. He shrugged lightly. You've had a long week. Food helps. I accepted the container. Thank you, James. He lingered for a moment, not imposing, simply present. If you ever want to talk, or walk, or just sit outside for some air. I'm right down the hall. There was sincerity in his eyes, not hungry, not romantic, just genuine concern. I appreciate that, I said softly. Good. He gave a small nod. Have a peaceful night, Marianne. When he left, I leaned against the closed door for a moment, letting the gentle kindness settle. It had been a long time since someone offered me something without expecting anything in return. I ate the pasta while watching the sunset cast pale orange light across the living room. The meal was simple but comforting, garlic, basil, something warm enough to settle into my bones. Then I cleaned the kitchen, folded laundry, and watered the plants by the window, mundane tasks that grounded me in my new reality. By the time I slipped into bed, peace wrapped around me like a soft quilt. But before turning off the light, I whispered into the stillness, I'm building a life I want to wake up in. And this time, it didn't feel like a hope. It felt like a promise. The next few days passed in a rhythm I hadn't felt in years, steady, manageable, mine. Each sunrise carried a sense of calm authority, as if the world had finally stopped spinning uncontrollably and settled beneath my feet again. But healing rarely arrives without interruption. By Wednesday morning, Clara called with a tone that told me something significant had shifted. Marianne, she said. Samuel filed a preliminary response. A thin slice of tension slid beneath my ribs. What did he say? Exactly what I predicted, she replied flatly. He's claiming the marriage fell apart due to mutual emotional distance. He argues that the relationship with the other woman began only after you allegedly withdrew affection. My jaw clenched. That's not just dishonest, it's insulting. Clara didn't miss a beat. That's why I wanted to speak with you immediately. We are going to respond firmly. You have evidence that contradicts his claims. I exhaled slowly. He's rewriting history. He's trying, she corrected. But the law doesn't operate on fantasy. Her confidence steadied me, a reminder that truth had become my greatest ally. We'll meet tomorrow morning to finalize your formal counter, she said. And Marianne, prepare yourself. When cornered, men like Samuel often thrash. I nodded even though she couldn't see me. I've survived worse than his thrashing. Good, she said. That's what makes you strong. When the call ended, I stood alone in my kitchen, gripping the countertop. The audacity of Samuel's narrative stirred a quiet fury inside me, not loud, not panicked, but resolute. He wanted to paint himself as the wounded party. He wanted to cast me as cold. He wanted to soften the damage of his choices, but I wasn't the woman who accepted the easy version of anything anymore. I was the woman who demanded truth, the woman who documented everything. The woman who was rebuilding her life with clarity sharper than broken glass. That afternoon, Daniel called. "Is now a good time?" He asked gently. "It is," I replied, grateful for the distraction. "I got my copy of Lena's response," he said. "She said she cheated because she felt underappreciated and unseen." A sad laugh escaped me. Amazing how betrayal always tries to disguise itself as emotional starvation. "That's exactly what I thought," he said. "It's exhausting." We talked for nearly 30 minutes, and as always, the conversation eased the weight on my chest. Our pain didn't mirror each other perfectly, but it harmonized in ways that made both of us feel less alone. Before hanging up, he said, "If you need someone with you at the attorney's tomorrow, I can come." Not inside, obviously. Just nearby. His offer warmed me more than I wanted to admit. "That's kind," I said softly. "But I'll be okay. You should focus on your case." "I will," he replied. "But the offer stands." Later that evening, I decided to step outside for fresh air. The neighborhood was wrapped in the soft glow of street lamps, and the scent of rain lingered in the night air. As I rounded the corner, I spotted James returning from the grocery store. He smiled when he saw me. "Out for a walk?" "Yes," I said, trying to clear my head. "Good idea," he replied. "Mind if I walk with you?" I hesitated, only for a heartbeat, and then nodded. "I'd like that." We strolled down the block in comfortable silence before he asked gently, "Everything okay today?" I sighed. Samuel responded to the divorce petition. "He's twisting the truth." James's expression darkened slightly, not with anger, but with protective frustration. "I'm sorry you have to deal with that. You deserve honesty." His tone was soft, but it carried weight, like he genuinely believed those words. "I'm handling it," I said. "But some days feel heavier than others." "I get that," he replied. "Just know you're not alone." "Not anymore." The sincerity in his voice pressed something warm against my chest. Friendship had become a lifeline I didn't know I needed. As we walked, he told me about his work restoring antique furniture, a passion he'd rekindled after losing his wife to illness 4 years ago. The grief still flickered in his voice, gentle but present. Yet there was also hope, the kind that blooms quietly after a long winter. When we reached the corner, he paused. "I'm glad you're stepping out," he said. "It's good to see you living again." I offered him a soft smile. "It feels good." We parted ways, and I walked home with a lighter heart. Inside the house, I prepared tea and curled up on the couch. As I sipped, my eyes drifted toward the wooden box of old memories, the one I had closed with such finality days earlier. Instead of reopening it, I grabbed a fresh notebook and began writing something completely different, a list of things I wanted in the next chapter of my life. Not unrealistic dreams, not fantasies, just truths, peace, boundaries, joy in small things, friends who show up, new experiences. Time alone when needed. Self-respect that never bends. I stared at the list for a long moment. It felt like a map of a future I was finally allowed to chart. Midway through my reflections, my phone buzzed. Samuel, not a call, this time, a long message. "Marianne, please stop painting me as a villain. I made a mistake, but the marriage was falling apart long before Lena. You were distant. You didn't want intimacy. I tried to talk to you. You shut down. I never meant to hurt you. I need you to acknowledge your part in all of this." My hand tightened around the phone, not because his words hurt, they didn't, but because they revealed exactly who he truly was. A man who feared accountability more than losing me. A man who preferred distortion over truth. The man who would twist his betrayal into my responsibility if allowed. Once, those words might have shattered me. Tonight, they rolled off me like water on stone. I typed a single sentence in reply. "The only part one played was trusting you." Then I blocked his number, not out of spite, out of self-preservation. My silence was no longer his playground. That night, before crawling into bed, I stood again by my bedroom window. Streetlights shimmered on the pavement like scattered pearls. The world outside felt calm, intentional. Inside, something profound settled within me. I was not fighting for the past anymore. I was stepping into my future. One measured breath, one honest boundary, one brave moment at a time. I whispered into the quiet, I choose me. And as the words left my lips, they didn't feel like a declaration, they felt like freedom. I didn't expect the final hearing to feel like the end of a season, one of those long, complicated seasons you live through without realizing how much of yourself you've lost. But the morning I walked into the courthouse, something inside me knew the chapter was closing. I could feel it in the quiet steadiness of my breath, in the grounded rhythm of my steps, in the way my heart no longer raced whenever Samuel's name appeared on a document. The sky was soft gray, layered with thin streaks of pale blue, an unfinished canvas, waiting for color. I clutched the file Clara had prepared, feeling its weight not as burden, but as evidence of my resilience. She greeted me outside the courtroom, her confidence as sharp as always. Today we'll move quickly, she said. You've already won the hardest part. I nodded, letting her words settle. Inside, Samuel sat at the opposite table with his attorney. He looked smaller than I remembered, shoulders slumped, expression clouded, nothing like the confident man who once walked out of our front door believing he could juggle 2 lives without consequences. He glanced at me briefly, then dropped his gaze. For the first time, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel heartbreak. I felt distance. A healthy, necessary distance that made the air between us feel like a closed book. The judge entered, and the room shifted into formal silence. Clara presented our case with the precision of someone wielding truth like a finely edged blade. The financial statements, the timeline of Samuel's deceit, the emotional abandonment, each piece placed firmly on the record. His attorney countered with tired arguments about emotional disconnect and mutual strain, but they sounded hollow in the face of documented reality. When the judge reviewed the evidence, he adjusted his glasses, looked at Samuel, and said, "These aren't the actions of a man in a mutually failing marriage. These are the actions of someone making deliberate choices outside of his vows." The words landed like a gavel before the gavel itself. Within 40 minutes, it was done. The house remained mine, the majority of assets transferred, reimbursement for every dollar he spent during the affair, and a formal acknowledgement of fault, signed and sealed. A clean end, carved from months of chaos. As I walked out of the courthouse, the winter air brushed my cheeks with gentle cold. Clara touched my arm lightly. "You handled this with more grace than most," she said. "Go build something beautiful now." I thanked her, hugged her, and then stepped onto the sidewalk alone. But I didn't feel alone, not anymore. Later that afternoon, I sat in my living room with a cup of chamomile tea, listening to the faint hum of neighborhood life outside. Cars passing. A dog barking. Wind chimes from the house across the street. The world hadn't paused for my heartbreak. It had simply waited for me to return. A soft knock broke the quiet. When I opened the door, Daniel stood there holding 2 cups of coffee. His expression gentle, respectful, grounded. "Thought you might need this," he said. I accepted the cup, smiling. "How did your hearing go?" "It's final," he replied. "The girls are with me." Lena agreed to everything. Relief flashed across his face, tired but genuine. "I'm happy for you," I said, "and for you," he added softly. "Today, it feels like we both stepped out of something heavy." We sat on the porch steps together, sipping coffee, letting the silence wrap around us comfortably. 2 people who had been broken in different ways, now knitted together by shared survival. At one point, he looked at me and said, "You know, I didn't think healing could look like this. Calm. Quiet. Not dramatic. Just steady." "I know what you mean," I said. "I thought healing meant forgiveness or forgetting. But it's neither. It's reclaiming parts of yourself you didn't know you'd given away." We talked until the sun dipped low, painting the sky with pink and gold. When he left, he paused at the bottom of the steps. "Marianne," he asked, "yes? You deserve good days ahead. Real ones." I nodded, feeling emotion pressed gently against my ribs. "So do you." He smiled once more before walking to his car. That night, I curled up on the couch with my notebook, flipping to the list I'd written: peace, boundaries, joy, connection, self-respect. I added a new line: freedom without fear. A simple phrase, but it felt like a doorway. After a moment, I closed the notebook and walked to the window. The moon hung high, silver and calm, illuminating the street below. I pressed my hand to the glass and watched my reflection, older, wiser, softened but not broken. For the first time, I saw a woman who didn't just survive betrayal. I saw a woman who transformed because of it. A woman who learned that strength doesn't come from holding everything together, it comes from letting go of what holds you back. If you're watching this, if you've lived through heartbreak, betrayal, or a love that left scars instead of safety, hear me clearly. You are not too old to start again. You are not too late to rebuild. You are not too broken to belong in a future that loves you back. Your worth is not defined by who walked away or who failed to cherish you. Your worth is defined by the courage to stay standing, to choose yourself, to walk forward even when the ground feels unsteady. Healing doesn't require perfection, just intention. One brave moment at a time. If this journey touched something inside you, if it reminded you that resilience can bloom even after the deepest heartbreak, hit that subscribe button right now. Because this channel isn't just about stories. It's about women like us, women who rise, who reclaim their voices, who walk into new chapters with shaky but determined steps. Don't leave without joining this community. More stories are coming, stories of strength, second chances, reinvention, and the kind of courage that only comes from surviving storms. Click follow. Click subscribe. Stay with me. The next chapter might be exactly what your heart needs.